Hello human beings, it's me, Cacti, not Cactuses, and today I'm going to be doing something pretty cool. I'm going to be giving you all tips for advanced editor. So a lot of people have told me that my coasters are really good, and that's probably because I used advanced editor. If you don't know how to use advanced editor, it's going to be really confusing, and honestly, I understand like how that feels. When I first started using advanced editor, my coasters were not that good, but today I'm going to show you guys kind of a walkthrough on everything you can do with it. So, I'm just going to be using the vertical launch coaster so you can see what I'm doing. I'm sure you're all familiar with basic editor. So, let's look at advanced. So, the first thing you see is this track. You see these three things. One is a red, one's green, one's blue. So, the red one changes the angle of the track. So, you can make it go up or down, which is pretty simple. The green one turns it left or right. And the blue one banks it left to right. So, and when you don't like what you've done, you wanna make sure that it just does. You can reset the piece of track that you're gonna build back to normal. You just click reset node down here. So some of the other stuff is self-explanatory. The arrows move back and forth between blocks. Removes a piece. Builds a piece. Now I usually don't use these that much, but if you go into move spline node, you can change the track like this instead of like the other way I showed you guys before. Except when you do move spline node, you can't really bank it, so I don't really use this one that much. Then you can do rotate spline mode, which does bank it. So you could use that if you wanted to, but honestly, it's not really something I do in my coasters. So I turn on auto smooth because that's automatically on. I think it's probably a good thing to leave it on. So I'm just going to start by showing you guys an element that a lot of people like to use, a vertical loop. So I'm going to start this by going into track feature, and since I don't want a chain lift, I mean it's easy to build a chain lift, but I'll put boosters so it'll go through the loop. So building a vertical loop is actually not very easy at all. It takes a little bit of practice. So if you want it to be really smooth, you want to get this, you want to try your best to get this at a 90-degree angle right here. So about like, let's say, like that. However, we don't want it to be this small, we're going to make it a lot bigger. So let's stretch it out using this arrow right here. I'm going to close the chat and the player list. Like that. Until it gets big enough. Before you build the first track piece, you don't want the track to run into itself later, so you want to start turning the track. Now when you do this, you'll notice it starts banking, so you can just bank it back to normal, or as normal as you can get it. With advanced editor, sometimes things just aren't going to be perfect, but you just gotta kind of learn to accept that. Something this game does a lot is when you build it, and when you invert a piece of track, it kind of banks it weirdly, so I'm going to make sure you just fix that. Then I got this on normal thing, and then we're going to stretch it out. By stretching it out, you can make it as big as you want, and it makes it a lot smoother. So we turn it a little bit there, again, and straighten this out, and boom, we have another piece. It's really not that hard once you get the hang of it, but your first creations with advanced are going to be pretty rough, I would say. So I got that back at 90 degrees, and I'm going to stretch it out again. I'm trying as hard as I can to make this symmetrical, like that. Yeah, that's another thing. You want to make sure that it is symmetrical. Just by trying to make the track pieces the same size and like shape. So there, that's not a perfect loop, but I think it's actually pretty good. So yeah, let's test it. Again, and let's see our final product. So what I did was I built an overall pretty smooth loop. So that was our first element. Now we're gonna close this like so. So that was our first element. Honestly, it's pretty simple. Now I'm gonna show you another element now. So this element is called a heartline roll. So it's similar to the element called an inline twist. So an inline twist is where pretty much you just bank it all the way 360 degrees. But with a heartline roll, you're going to want to change this pivot offset setting to +4. So when you do this, it changes this. And when you change the banking, it goes in a heartline shape like this. So when you do this, you can build a roll that looks really satisfying to look at. And honestly, it's just an awesome element to go through. And yeah, and it's as simple as doing that. All you have to do is turn your pivot offset up, and then you can turn it back down whenever you want to. So let's test this. It might valley and go backwards. Oh no, it's not. Okay. Overall though, it's very smooth, and overall, it just looks like a really nice element for the train to go through. So I'm gonna close that. It's probably gonna crash now. And boom. So let's move on to our next element. So now I'm gonna teach you guys how to do a 0G roll. So for a 0G roll, you want to think about it like an airtime hill, but at the top you reach completely upside down. So first of all, I'm gonna reset node, put pivot offset on 0. And then go into booster. So I'm just putting booster so it'll go through it successfully. And then what you want to do is start making the track go up. Once you have it at the desired elevation, you can do it like that. And then this is when you start twisting. You can twist either any way you want, like that. I usually just bank it as much as I can for one track piece. When you finally reach the top, you want to do this. Just make it flatten out and then make it go all the way upside down. So at this point, you want to just start going down now, and you want to start going, keep banking. Keep going down and just unbank with each track piece until you have completely unbanked it. Like that. So yeah, if I'm going too fast for you guys, you can always just rewind it to see everything I did. So I'll put the boost speed up a little bit to make sure it goes through. So yeah, if a good 0G roll looks like that, kind of like a twisted hill. So pretty simple stuff. Now, another thing I have to say, another tip, it's always good to have the game passes. So like, I have disable collisions, well I have all the game passes, but disable collisions is one of the most helpful because you can build pretty much anywhere you want. So that was another element. So another great element to build on a coaster is an Immelman or a dive loop. So this goes either way, but I'm going to build a dive loop. So, just putting 2 boosters, and then you want to start going up, kind of like we did with the 0G roll. Keep going up. So at this point, we'll make it start banking, and we'll make it start flattening out up here. So when we reach the top, kind of like the 0G roll, we're going to be completely inverted. But this time we're going to start going down. So we're going to start with a twisting incline and then go into a downwards half loop. So this actually can be done in basic editor, but advanced editor looks a little bit cooler, I think. Boom, and then at the bottom we can just turn it like that or something. I don't know, to make it so it doesn't hit the track. So that's my dive loop, let's test it. So yeah, that's what a good dive loop should look like. And if you want to make an Immelman is pretty much a reverse dive loop. You start with a half loop and then twist out. So that's pretty simple stuff. So those are some of the main elements I like to put on coasters, but another thing you might see on some of my coasters are turns. So for turns, something you want to make sure you do is just for turns, make sure your turns are always decently banked. An unbanked turn looks pretty weird, and you don't want too many lateral forces because that would be very painful for the riders, and overall it just does not look very pleasing to look at. So if we want to start, let's say we want to start a turn. The first thing that you ever want to do is bank it just a little bit and then make it go the other way, just a very tiny bit. When you do this, the turn instantly becomes a lot smoother, and you just go into it in a lot more satisfying way. So usually, if you want to make a larger turn, you can just stretch this out, like so. So, let's talk about unbanking. So when you unbank, you want to keep turning the track. Even if it's not completely banked, you just want to keep turning it until it's like completely unbanked. So, for example, like this. Even if you're banking it the other way. So let's say I wanted to bank it the other way. Let's say I wanted to go like an S bend right here. So then it would go like that. And that's how you get that really smooth, satisfying feel to it. So I don't have that much room right there, so I'm gonna have to delete that one. And then let's look. Let's see what it looks like. So if you notice right there, that turn looks much smoother when I did that. So if you guys want an example of what not to do, look at this. So a bad turn would look like this. Let's put some boosters. This is something that you don't want to do right here. I mean, you can do it. It doesn't look the worst, but it also doesn't look very good. Also, if you do this, if you only bank it like a little bit, that doesn't look very good either. Honestly, I don't recommend doing it like that, but the way I turned right there, that's pretty much how you want to do it. Of course, you're not going to be an expert at this right away, but practice makes perfect. Or, I should say, practice makes better. So let's talk about airtight. So if you see my coasters, you know they seem to always have airtight mills. So there's different ways you can build them. Personally, this is how I do a normal one. So you start by going to whatever elevation that you want, and I usually stretch it out a little bit. And then you make it not elevated anymore. Try your best to make it at a nice 0 degree angle. It's there, and then do the same thing over here. So one of the key things about the airtight mill to make it really good is you want to make it completely symmetrical. If it's not symmetrical, it looks really ugly and just overall feels different than a normal symmetrical airtight mill. So obviously that isn't perfect, but I did a pretty good job at making it symmetrical. So I'll put more boosters here so I can show you a different way. So if you want, let's say we want to make a really big airtight mill, like on a B&M Hyper. We're going to need multiple track pieces, and we're gonna make it parabolic, which means we're gonna draw it out a little bit more, so kind of like this. Try to make it symmetrical there. So the top, instead of having 2 pieces, has 4 then. That's a lot harder to make symmetrical, so I would recommend building that after you know your skills are very good. Although I built it pretty horrible right there. I don't even know if it's going to make it over, but let's try it out. Let's test and see how it looks. So in my opinion, that looks pretty good. And that's how you build like a normal airtime hill. Now let's talk about building a drop. So a lot of building a good coaster kind of revolves around how the drop looks. So I mean, not necessarily your coaster could just be a launch coaster. That's fine, but I want to focus on right now building a really nice looking drop. So there's lots of different ways you can build a drop. Sometimes you might want to even build it in advanced edit. So I'll build the chain lift. I mean, in basic, I don't know. So I'm gonna build the chain lift in basic, just because there's no point in building it in advanced unless there's a specific angle that I want. So let's just say I built it this high. So really much for the drop, you want to spend more time valleying out rather than the actual really steep part. That's usually what I do anyway, to make it look really good. So for my drops, I want to start with a sudden change in elevation. So that's why I really don't stretch them out, because it feels too drawn out. So then I'm just going to gradually make it really steep. Like this. And then this is when I'm going to start bottoming out. So for this one, I am going to want to make it drawn out, this part. So, boom, like that. And there we go. I think that's a pretty good drop. That's just an example. You can build the drops however you want to, but they do look a lot less satisfying in advanced, in basic. Something about building them is, something you want to remember is, if you keep it at the same angle and you don't change the angle at all, it kind of looks weird, like it's just straight track. So that's something you want to watch out for, if you know what I mean. So let's go over here and let's test this one. So we're gonna go up this chain lift. I probably should have made it a little bit faster, but whatever. And we're about to see this drop. Here we go. Seeing that drop looks nice and well-rounded. So that's how you build a drop. So I've covered a lot of elements and things, but now you're probably, a good thing to remember is how to build a good layout. So it's easy to teach these things individually, but building a good layout is really all up to your own taste and preference. As long as you're really proud of it, it doesn't matter that much. But it's also really good to take constructive criticism from others. So I always like to integrate those other elements right there, but you kind of gotta decide what you want. So if you see some of my other videos, some of my layouts are like multi-looping coasters and stuff, but some of my other layouts are like airtime machines, like Mach 2 or Mach 3, if you've seen those. Or you could have a bit of both. You could also have a twister layout with all turns, but I'll do all this. So first, I want to show you guys some examples of inversions. And I've already done them, but oh, great, my dog is barking. I don't know if you guys can hear that. Let's say I'll do a dive loop. Alright, so guys, I want to speed this layout up, and I'll show you guys the finished product when I'm done. So something else I want to tell you guys about is snap node to grid. So let's say your ride you want to put an element from basic editor. What you want to do is you want to click the snap node to grid button, and it immediately goes into a part of the grid and snaps it so you can use basic editor again. So I'm going to show you guys by putting an element in. So I want to put down a corkscrew. So with a corkscrew, you want to go start with 1. I'm doing up left, and since it's up left, the next one I have to do is down right, like that. So there we go, that's a corkscrew. So, and then after we're done with basic editor or anything else we wanted to do, we can just keep going in advanced. That was just an example. Now, yeah, I'm gonna say though, corkscrews are pretty hard to build in advanced. You can tackle that on your own if you'd like, but I'm really not very good at doing them. That's why I didn't really talk about them in this video. So another tip that I have is if you want to go to another part of the track, you have to double right click on it, and then boom, you go right over to it. So if I do it again, I'll go over here. Something else you need to do when you're building a coaster: put a brake run on it. Okay, I mean, this is something that is really a good thing to do, because when you don't have a brake run and you go abruptly into the brakes, it just looks horrible, and honestly, it kind of makes the ending of the coaster look rough, and overall puts a little bit of a bad taste in your mouth, I would say. Now, we're almost done our coaster here. So we're gonna just turn into the brakes soon. So at the end of your coaster, what you want to do is, you're going to see this thing right here that says snap node to segment. This is how you connect it to the end. And boom, we have ourselves a coaster. So, you guys already know what it's like to build an entrance and exit. So, I'll ride it, show you guys the POV, and then we'll go through the layout. So let's, oh wait, I have to test it. So let's do it. So on determining the height for your coaster, you can pretty much pick anything, but it's good to make it decently high so you can have a good amount of speed. You can measure the height just by clicking 5, and then it'll just... So we start with a dive loop, then going into... We start with an element going into a dive loop, sorry. Now we'll go into a turn, and an airtight bump. So that one's pretty slow. Usually what I do is I lower the track friction when I can. Actually just go to 75. So let's test it again. And I'm just going to go into everything I did a little bit in depth. So the dive loop was pretty much how I did it before. Yeah, it was 2 dive loops actually. Pretty simple stuff. As you can see, I did the technique with the turn right there, where I went out a little bit. And the airtime hills are kind of like how I designed them, along with the heartline roll. It's all pretty simple. So yeah, I really hope that helped. This tutorial was just for the people who saw my coasters and were inspired and wanted to build other stuff like them. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed that video. I know it was pretty long. And you all have a great day. Just for me, you gotta remember, it's cacti, not cactuses.